Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ready, Set, Resume, how to translate your experience to paper. This is presented by MSSU Career Services, and I want to thank you for joining us today. Here's our agenda. We're going to talk about this as before the resume, during the resume, and then once your resume is done, kind of after. So first we'll talk about some resume basics and some brainstorming strategies for content to put onto your resume. We will talk about which information to include and exclude. We'll talk about the bullet points of a resume. And then we'll follow that up with submitting and applying, next steps. Then we're going to wrap it up like a burrito at the end. So stay with us as we jump into our first slide. Now, a resume is just simply a piece of paper that tells the story of your knowledge, skills, and abilities. So this is something that is going to provide a summary, something that's going to demonstrate that you are qualified for a particular position, and it's going to help you get an interview. The resume alone will not get you the job, but it's to get your foot in the door for the interview. So here's some really common mistakes that I see. I wanted to make sure that I point these out to you. First of all, the templates that you use. Microsoft Word and Google Docs are great for writing essays and papers and reports, but they are not great for resumes. You definitely want to avoid the colors, graphics, and fancy fonts that they include. And the reason for this is that resumes should be a little bit more plain text so that they can be read by applicant tracking systems. Now, what I mean by that ATS is a computer algorithm that's going to review your resume whenever you submit it before a human ever lays eyes on it. So if that computer algorithm, little computer robot, can't read your resume because it can't read colors, graphics, and fonts, then nobody's ever really going to look at your resume. So you definitely want to avoid those fancy looking templates. The next common mistake I see is with length. So a resume should be 1 page in length for every 5 to 7 years of professional experience. And what I mean by professional experience is post-graduation within your industry. So you may have had 4 or 5 years of experience from high school in your early years of college, but we're talking about that post-college graduation in your career in industry. Now, there are exceptions to this, but that doesn't happen very often. Some more non-traditional students or people coming back to Missouri Southern to change careers or something, they may have a longer one, but rarely that happens. Okay, next, I see a lot of people just trying to add and cram as much stuff onto the resume as they can. And we don't have a word limit on a resume, so we definitely need to cut that fluff out. So you want to remove old and irrelevant information from 6 years ago. You don't want any high school information on there either. You want to keep it to college and whatever's most recent. And then as far as a file format goes, PDF is usually best because it can be read on any machine, any program, any age, like an old computer, new computer. PDF is pretty much the standard across all of them. Now, if they specify another format, definitely submit it within that. But PDF is usually your best bet. Now, we talked about those brainstorming strategies. So before I write a resume, I like to just kind of think of my ideas first, and then it helps the writing part be just a little bit easier. So first up on my brainstorming list is to think of your strengths, your accomplishments, and your past experiences. So what are you good at? What do you like doing? What's something that is a really big deal in your past experience that you've done? And I say experience, not job history, for a specific reason. We'll get more into that later. Number 2, you can analyze the job posting. So within that job description or internship, you will see that they have qualifications, skills, requirements, whatever they call it. They're going to have a list of qualities that they're looking for in their candidates. Take a look at those. Sometimes it's hard to think of stuff just out of thin air, but if we can see a list, sometimes it's like, oh yeah, I can do that. I've done that before. Sometimes that helps jog our memory. And then the last thing to do is ask others for their opinions. So trusted people within your circle, such as supervisors or professors. Your grandma is going to say wonderful things about you, but she may not be the best person to assess your work and employability skills. So you want to try to have people who are in non-related position of authority, let you know what those are. Friends would probably be okay too. But these are some ways that you can kind of get started thinking of what should go on your resume. Okay, I don't want you to be like Pam Halpert. Her resume fits on a Post-it note. She has very limited work experience outlined, and she doesn't really tell a good story of what she's capable of. I don't want you to be like Pam Halpert. So I want to give you my resume roadmap. We'll go through breaking a resume down section by section to talk about what's good information and what you should probably not include in there. So at the very top of your resume will be your header, and this is your contact information. So name, phone number, email, address. Sometimes if you are living in Joplin, but you want to get a job in Kansas City, sometimes having a non-local address can hurt your chances a little bit. So usually we add that, but sometimes you might not want to. Could have your LinkedIn URL on there. Make sure you check out the video that we have on the LinkedIn Lab so that you can learn a little bit more about that. And the example that I have up here on the screen is just one example of how it could look. Yours could be formatted in different ways. My personal resume has everything all in one line instead of stacked upon top of each other. So that can be formatted to, really whatever your preference is on that. But the header should contain all of these pieces of information. So moving down the resume, next is our education. All universities and colleges that you graduated from should be on here. So if you went to a different school before Missouri Southern, but you just transferred your credits, let's say you went to the U of A for a year and then transferred back home to here, you don't need to list the U of A on there. You don't need to list high school on there. As a college student, it's understood that you have that high school diploma or the equivalent thereof. So you just want to list if you got a degree from there or if you're currently attending. And the most recent is always going to be listed first. So after I graduate with my bachelor's degree, if I went on to get a master's degree, my master's degree would be the first entry and then my bachelor's. And it's the same way with the example here on the screen. I graduated with my associates first, so that is at the bottom, and then my most recent graduation is the Missouri Southern with my bachelor's degree. You don't need to list the entire range that you've been in college because that doesn't necessarily let somebody know, if you're a freshman or a sophomore, because sometimes things happen. So you only want to list whenever you graduated, like a month and a year, like you see on the screen, or your anticipated graduation. So if you said anticipated graduation, December 2021, they would know, okay, this student has about a semester left, so they're probably a senior level. So we have our header, we have education. Next up on the resume roadmap is our related coursework. Now this is classes that are related to the position that you're applying for. Okay, maybe your field, but not necessarily. And you want to make sure that you list out the course titles and not the numbers. Anybody outside of Missouri Southern will not know what GB 320 means, but they will know what business communication means. So you want to make sure that you use the actual course titles, then use higher level classes. So don't use an introductory or principles of class. Use one of the higher level, usually 300, 400 level. And you can always consult your degree works and your unofficial transcript to help you remember those classes that you've taken. Sometimes that's hard. Okay, underneath related coursework, we have experience. Now, as I said earlier, this isn't just limited to work history. We call it experience for a very specific reason. You are getting experience or you are obtaining skills and growing your skill set out of many things that you do, not just jobs that you are paid for. So class projects, student organizations here on campus, club, sorority, fraternity, like you are getting skills in all of those things. Student athletes is a really good example of this. It's not a job that you get paid for, but you are learning very valuable transferable skills. So when I say experience, it's not just limited to work history. There's a lot of other things that you can put into there. You'll notice here on the screen, I have two different sections. One says related experience and one says other. So related, like the name implies, is related to the job that I'm applying for. And other is just some more work history. And we'll get into that in a couple of slides. We also have some flexibility. Maybe we want to call this leadership experience or professional experience. It doesn't have to stick to related and other. We want to make sure that we have a nice description of what that section contains. So those are able to be customized. Okay, so now for the other experience, it's the experience that's not related to the job. So we're not really going to have the bullet points on there. We're not going to tell that story with these, but we do want to list them out so that we're showing more work history. Because if we only listed the things that are related, that might only go back 6 to 12 months in time, when in reality, maybe we've had a job the entire time we've been in college. So we have 4 years of work history. So it's a good idea to list out the related experience with your bullet points so that you can tell that story of your qualifications. And then that other experience is just there to build out some more work history or some experience history. A lot of times what I see with college students, particularly junior level and below, is that they just have one section that just simply says experience because they don't have enough differentiation to make two different categories. So again, this is really going to be reflective of a snapshot of you in that time. So it's really reflective of where you're at in life right now and not necessarily trying to fit what you have into this other mold, which is what I'm illustrating right here on this slide. Always want that most recent job listed first though, regardless of how you do it. The most recent entry should be at the top of every single section, and then you go backwards in time. Okay. Next, we have campus involvement. This could also be called honors and memberships. I mean, it can really be called a few different things. Again, it's reflective of what information you're including in that section. Most recent first, I just got done saying that. You want to have really consistent formatting within this section. So you want everything to look the same. And we don't need too much detail. We don't need to say exactly what we did as a member of one of these committees. We just say that we were a member of one of these committees. That's where the interview is going to come into play. Because remember, this document is not all encompassing or comprehensive. It's only a little nugget of information, and then you go into more detail within your interview. So consistency, but not too much detail. Okay. And then we can also have community involvement, and this is volunteer work. We don't want to call it, I don't have an example, I'm sorry. This is the problem of live recording. We don't want to call it community service because that kind of implies that it's court ordered. But this is any time that you're giving your time to an organization, individually or with a group. So I know a lot of the sports teams here on campus have that service learning requirement for the team. So they all go as a group to do something. But a lot of times it's just by ourselves that we're doing something. The really neat thing about Joplin is that we have over 300 nonprofits in the area alone. So there is a flavor for everybody. You like kids, old people, dogs. Me, I like history. So I like to volunteer at museums and things like that. But this is something that employers are going to expect on your resume. This is also showing them just at a first glance of your resume without even really knowing you. If they see somebody who was going to college while also working, while also finding time to volunteer, they're seeing somebody who can manage their time very well. They're seeing someone who cares about something bigger than themselves. And these are all really good things to present yourself in a really good light without really having to do that much. Plus, it just feels good to give back, you know? So that community involvement, volunteering is an important aspect of your resume. Okay, now, I've said this a few different times, but a good resume is telling a story. It's telling the story of why you are qualified for that particular position. So here's some bullet point best practices. Number one, it will start with an action verb. Best practice usually dictates that everything starts with a past tense action verb. So a lot of ed on the end, created, displayed, things like that. Although some people do choose to use present tense for their present jobs, doesn't necessarily hurt or harm you in any way. A good bullet point is going to focus on a skill, an employability skill, and not necessarily a task or something that is on your to-do list. For instance, if you work as a cashier somewhere, operating a cash register is a task, but the skill required to do that well would be organization, attention to detail, things like that. Those are the employability skills that will transfer from one company to another or one industry to another. Cashiering might not. And then the last thing is a good bullet point will be quantifiable and measurable. Basically, we can put a number to it or measure it in some sort of way. Personality or characteristics are not things that we would want to put on our resume, like friendly. Friendly is a little bit subjective. How I define friendly might be different than how you define friendly. And that's more of a personality trait or a characteristic that can't necessarily be measured. The skill that goes with that, though, customer service, can be measured. So again, you want to focus on those skills, measurable things, and you want to really start with a strong action verb. We don't want to write in the passive voice. So we have a statement structure here. This is kind of the formula for how you will write each and every one of your bullet points. In that first part, we'll start with the past tense action verb. Then you'll go into what you did. When, why, who, what, those W words, kind of answering that question. And then the really important part is we want to have a result or an impact. We want that outcome or the cause and effect between what you did and what happened because of that. Because of my good customer service, I retained clientele or something along those lines. So you want to talk about the skill and then the cause and effect of that, simply put. Okay, just because I'm a visual learner, I think this is helpful. Here are some examples. And you can see here the green color is the past tense action verb. The blue is the job responsibility or what you did. And then the yellowy orange is the result or the impact. So if you think of the blue and the yellow as cause and effect. By adding details like this into your bullet points, you are building credibility. You are painting a better picture. And you're able to showcase the depth, the breadth, and the scope of what you did. So if we just, for this first bullet point, if I just had on a resume, prepared sales pitches, doesn't say why, how many, who I'm giving these pitches to, or if I'm even, delivering them. It just says prepared. So by fleshing that out and saying prepared and delivered over 10 sales pitches each week to prospective clients, I'm seeing somebody who has probably some persuasive skills, some selling skills, and who can probably turn out some things pretty fast. If they're doing 10 each week, that's more than one per day. And then the other ones, again, by quantifying them or showing how they're measured, are really showing the impact. Published posts on social media, okay, well, we pretty much all do that, some are better than others. But to do it in the professional aspect, to increase followers by 1,000 in under 3 months, that's building it quite a bit. So again, you're really showcasing how impressive something like this is. See if this will play for you.
Rich, did you proofread these? Yeah, why?
Nothing. I'm sure they'll be impressed with your excellent computer skills.
You think about all of them?
Oh, no, I'm sure the Xerox machine cut it.
Okay, so if you couldn't hear that, hopefully the volume comes through on your end. It's a scene from Friends where Rachel had a typo in her resume, which is, oh gosh, it's just one of those awful things that happens. So you definitely want to make sure that you have an extra set of eyes on your resume. You know, that's what career services is here for, but you can also have a friend, a professor, someone you trust look at it as well. I have heard from HR professionals and people who do hiring that if they see a resume with a typo on it, they really don't give it a second glance because at face value, first impression, they're seeing somebody who doesn't do careful work or doesn't check their work. You know, they're sending something in with a typo. So it's really important to make sure that everything is really error-free. Now, you have your resume completed. What do? Okay, well, obviously you apply, but here are some specific tips to kind of keep in mind at this stage. You need to target your resume to a specific position. So you might need to tweak it a little bit. Different industries use different keywords. Different companies within the same industry might call them clients versus customers. So you want to make sure that you're matching their vernacular. And again, that's where that job description is really going to come in handy because it's really going to provide you with the roadmap of everything that you need to put in here. Okay, so you really want to target that and you might need to update it each time. Now, I'm not saying you need to rewrite it each time, but you might need to update it, tweak a couple of things here and there. Okay, now after you apply, you want to follow up with an email or maybe a phone call if you're a little bit more old-fashioned, about 7 to 10 business days after applying. So you want to make sure you're not including the weekends or holidays in that. And you just want to do a quick follow-up just to show them, hey, I'm still interested, checking in on this, you know, and it's helping to bring top of mind awareness to them of you and your qualifications. Big one here, you need to make sure your voicemail is ready to go. So it needs to be set up, empty it out, shouldn't be full, and you should record something like, hi, this is Shakira, please leave me a message, versus just having your phone number in there. But make sure that voicemail is ready to go. Because again, based on research and what I know from colleagues who are in the HR world, they are basically going to give you one call. They're going to give you one shot. And if you don't have a voicemail set up, they're going to move to the next candidate down. You know, they may shoot you a quick email after that voicemail, but if you're not checking your voicemail, are you really checking your email? So you want to make sure that that voicemail is ready to go and that you're presenting yourself in a professional way. Speaking of that, you definitely want to review your online presence as well. Are you presenting yourself professionally? Even though your profiles on your social media accounts may be private, they could still see stuff. Friends of friends sometimes can. And then there are also like your profile pictures, for example, on Facebook are all public. So do you have a picture of you doing a keg stand with the boys on the weekend? Or do you have, you know, some sort of professional looking picture? You just want to make sure, again, that you're presenting yourself in the best light. Stuff like that is fine to do on your own time. But when it comes to looking for a job, companies are wanting good representatives and they want somebody who has a professional online presence. Okay, just a few more things to remember. Number one, a resume does not include an objective statement or a skills section. So this was a thing back in like 1999, you would see these things on there. Those things have gone away, just like clothing styles change, so do resume styles. So don't put an objective or a skills section on there. No. Okay, you definitely want to check for errors before you send out. We kind of talked about this. An error could be the difference in something that gets you a job versus doesn't. Keep it to 1 page in length. You want to go back in time about 5 to 7 years. Just depending on how things fall, it may be a little more, a little less. Again, that's just kind of a general practice. And then you do not include high school information on your college resume. The exception to this rule would be maybe if this is your very first semester ever at Missouri Southern, you may have some of that stuff on there just because you haven't been in college long enough to really get anything. But by the time you have a couple of semesters under your belt, that stuff needs to come off. You need to be working towards gaining new experiences to showcase on there. And then I did just want to show you on our website, we have a new online scheduling tool. So if you go to mssu.edu/career, scroll down to that schedule online button. It's going to take you to the bookings page. You select your service at the top, go down to the calendar, and then you can pick and choose whatever day, whatever time you want, fill out the information and click book. If you forget to type in something, it's going to let you know so you can fix it. And once that's done, I will get an email, you will get an email confirming that appointment. And again, that's mssu.edu/career and scroll down to schedule online. All right. If you would like to book an appointment right now, you can open up your phone camera and scan this QR code, and that will take you directly to that same bookings page. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, you can call or email us. Our phone number is 417-625-9343, or you can email us at careerservices@mssu.edu. Thank you, everybody, for your time. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. That is what we are here for. Thank you.